All right, the shroud. You opened up that can of worms. I wasn't going to go there. I actually penciled it in, like on my piece of paper here, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to do that, but I'm going to open it now. What's your take on it?
I'm with Gary on that. I lean very strongly that it's very authentic. But I don't put all my eggs in the basket. Even if we didn't have the shroud, if the shroud were not even in the picture, I think we have a very strong case that for the resurrection. But I think it's legit, and I think it's because of what Gary. Because a lot of what I learned about from Gary on this, because what they do, and he explained it to me this way: what they do, the scientists have done that are really setting this in a very critical, academic, scientific manner, is they eliminate what it's not. It's not a painting. It's not this. It's not that. What they've decided, and where all the arrows seem to point to scientifically on the shroud, is that it is very much almost like an X-ray or a gamma ray image. There are two types of radiation that could cause that kind of image: X-ray and gamma radiation. And these are the two most powerful forms of radiation in the electromagnetic spectrum. And then you take with that all the other ancillary and corollary evidence, such as the weave of the fabric, the pollen that was on the thing, the chemical analysis of the limestone that was found on the feet, the manner in which the body was rapidly buried, the blood stains, that it was blood. Also, one other thing too, I don't know if you've ever heard this, Billy, this is really amazing. It's something I learned from Gary, is the sequence of the stains on the shroud were interesting. And basically, the blood was first, and then the image came after. So in other words, a dead body was wrapped, and then this image of this body. In fact, the image can't be seen with the naked eye. You can only see it through a photographic negative. So I lean toward that it's authentic, but I'm not going to put all my eggs in the basket.
Yeah, and I think that's obviously you wouldn't put all your eggs in the basket on almost anything,
Nope.
One piece of evidence. We talked about that earlier, but with the shroud, I would agree, right? Like nobody should put all their evidence on it. So if somebody's somehow has found this podcast and they're not a believer, like Christians are not banking on the shroud as some sort of like, this is a make or break it for the resurrection. Here's my take on it. So my first introduction to it was like some History Channel documentary that I watched when I was like in high school or something. I had no idea the ridiculous nature of the History Channel back then, but I didn't know this thing's actually been studied for that long. So when I started to get into the apologetics world and I heard Gary Habermas talk about it and you and some other people, I started to look into it some. So I watched Gary's like hour-long lecture on it. Now, of course, that is tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, there's all that more micro details about it. I haven't done the actual micro detail study about it. I've listened to his lectures. I've listened to some other people talk about it. So here's my hang up. All right. I'm going to give my pushback, and here's my hang up, right? The way I look at things is I'm not a presuppositionalist, but for the sake of this, I'm going to be a presuppositionalist.
Sure.
Right. So I believe that since God exists, he strategically gives us things in the time that we need them historically to give us like enough evidence to where we can believe in him, but not like let me write my name in the sky so nobody can deny me sort of a thing. Right. Mm-hmm. So I believe that like the Dead Sea Scrolls, I think that was absolutely pinpoint. He gave them at that specific time because it's like right when all that sort of scholarship was ramping up. So he can come in and go, look how ridiculous y'all are. Same thing with discovery of the Hittites, so I look at the discoveries that we have, the evidence that we have, God giving it to us in those times. So with the Shroud of Turin, the question I ask myself is, if God is going to give us that type, like that category of a piece of evidence, because it's kind of like a standalone thing, mm-hmm. Why would he give it to us in such a not controversial, but like such a unsure manner? Like give it to us to where it's like, man, this is pretty legit. I can't believe that this is actually there. But then the second question I have is, why would he even do it when we have this mountain of other evidence that supports, the Bible, Christianity, Jesus, all that sort of stuff? Like, why give us this thing that seems so mystical, like kind of like one of those things you read about in a Lord of the Rings. You know, like when I read about the resurrection of Jesus, right? Now, okay, well, we got inscriptions on ossuaries that talk about Jesus, and we have, you know, people being crucified in the first century, so we know crucifixion happened. You know, I see that sort of stuff, the pottery and the pottery evidence that you talk about on some of your videos, and how it confirms to us, you know, things that happen in the Old Testament when they happen. That to me is like, that's, you know, that's the evidence that makes sense. It's not all like fanciful and weird. But the Shroud of Turin to me is like, why would God give us a piece of evidence that's some sort of like gamma radiation to prove that Jesus rose from the dead? So to me, that's my hang up. Tell me why I'm wrong. Help me.
Well, that's all anecdotal. I mean,
I
God can do whatever he wants, however he wants it. And it's not always what we think. It's, you know, but the fact of the matter is, though, Billy, there are people who don't believe it. In fact, most people don't believe it. So even if you could show beyond a shadow of a doubt that it was legitimate, there will still be people who won't believe it. So
I'm open to it.
I don't know of any major apologist who uses that as their major argument, but I will say, here's how I put it in the category of evidence. It's one of those things that's really hard to explain if you, from a purely naturalistic standpoint. And it's more of like a pebble in the shoe kind of thing, to use a Greg Kokel term. It's like what do you do with the Shroud of Turin? I mean, I don't put all of my eggs in the basket, but it cannot be explained naturalistically. It's not a painting. It's not, it can only be, you know, here's the thing is that if Jesus was the creator of the universe, let me give you a little pushback. What happened on the Mount of Transfiguration?
Yeah, he glowed white, right? I mean, he had this huge,
his face shone like the surface of the sun. What does the sun have coming out of it? Radiation. It would kill you if you were near it. So that amount of radiation would kill a human being. But if you're the creator of the universe in a human body, and that human body comes back to life in a piece of cloth, then it's just going to flash, bulb, light the whole thing up, and he's going to just go right through the cloth. So one of the things also that Gary talks about is the images of the hands on the shroud are the bone. You can actually see the bones. They can actually see the teeth in the beard, the coins on the eyes. Gary actually admitted that I think a while back he'd made the case that you could actually make out the actual Pontius Pilate coins, but that's really hard to make the case for that. But they are definitely coins, and they date from the Roman period. But it's all of that is all just circumstantial. There's no way to 100% show it to be true. It's all I'll say is it's an interesting artifact that can't be explained. That's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to.
But to your point, though, circumstantial evidence actually it can build a very strong case, and even in some sense can build a stronger case, you know, than. I'm not saying eyewitness because of the Gospels, but, you know, I'm just thinking about, like, you know, out on the street today, if you talk to 10 people who saw something, their eyewitness testimony maybe versus like a load of circumstantial evidence. Like, it's not that the eyewitness is way over the circumstantial evidence, because we don't know if we can trust them. They could be liars. They could be making it up. They could have bad memories. They could have thought they saw something when they really didn't see something, but all the circumstantial evidence is, you know, it's unbiased. It just is, right?
Let me recommend. Can I recommend a book to you on this?
Absolutely.
This is something that Gary recommended me several years ago. I think it was after he came to my house. I initially got this crazy thing, got to be on the History Channel, and then CNN contacted me and wanted me to come on one of their shows where they're going to talk about the Shroud of Turin. So I actually emailed Gary, and I was like, "Hey, Gary, I got contacted by CNN, and they're doing this documentary called Jesus, Faith, Fact, Forgery. They're going to talk about the Shroud of Turin and some relics and artifacts of Christianity." I said, "You need to be on this. I'm not qualified. I'm not. This is not my thing. This is your thing." He insisted that I should do it. He said, "No, Ted, you do it. You do it. Let me recommend a book to you." So he sent me an article by Jerry Bergeron, and then he told me to get the book. And here's the book I want to recommend to you, Billy, and also to people listening to this. If they want to explore this further, this will blow your mind. This book is just amazing. Regardless of whether or not you believe in the Shroud or not, it's an amazing book. It's called The Crucifixion of Jesus by Frederick Zugby. ZGBIE, I think it is. You can get it on Amazon. And it is a forensic analysis of the crucifixion by a forensic pathologist. And he's got some things in there on Shroud. And this book will blow your mind. It gets into the detail, the physiological detail of Roman crucifixion. And he actually he did some work with cadavers and on crosses, and how the nails would hang in your hand, and the pain, that what you would actually feel, how many nerve endings are on your forehead, the cat o' nine tails, and then describes the image on the shroud. I mean, you just have to read this book. This is the one that Gary told me to read before I went on the CNN documentary, and it's called The Crucifixion of Jesus by Frederick Zugby.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely check that out. I mean, like I said, look, I gave my initial baloney meters going off sort of a thing.
Yeah.
I have not done the research on it, so I'm open to the fact that it could be very convincing. It just seems weird to me, this sort of piece of evidence it is, but again, this is where I think as a honest person, and as somebody, this is how everybody should function, is like, okay, this is my feeling. Now let me look at the facts. Right? Let me look at the facts and see. And like you said, look, it's not something you put all your eggs in one basket. It's also something that, like I may study the evidence and go, yeah, I don't know, I'm still not convinced. But that doesn't mean that I think somebody else is dumb for thinking that it is. Or even like it's, this is one of those pieces of evidence that you could say, I'm not sold that it absolutely is, but maybe I'm like 70% that it most likely is.
Yeah.
I think that's okay.
So, Billy, what are you going to do? Billy, what are you going to do when you get to heaven and God says, I sent you the shroud and you didn't believe?
I say, listen, I believe in you for the other stuff. I didn't need everything else.
I'm just pulling your leg, man.
Yeah, I didn't need all that other evidence. I just had blind faith.
I gave you the burial cloth of my son and you didn't believe.
Yeah, right. No, exactly.
He gave us his word. That's all we need.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. So